It wasn't long ago that I first learned about Itchio. If you're not familiar, itch.io is a website where indie game developers can post their work. You can post your games for free, or you can offer them for a price, or even have a pay-what-you-want system. At first, I thought the site was just for video games, but when I discovered it was also full of tabletop role-playing games, I was officially intrigued. As a solo TTRPG creator, I was really excited to have a place to potentially start posting my work. I had a finished game at the time, but I still needed some tweaks and testing, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to post it quite yet. Instead, I turned to one of my smaller, unfinished ideas to post first, as sort of a trial run, since I was new to both putting my work out there and Itch.io. My first published game, called Mushroom Realty, is a simple journaling game where you take on the role of a mushroom person who buys and sells randomly generated mushroom houses to other mushrooms who are looking for a place to live. After I posted it with some success, a few purchases, and a fair amount of views, I started looking into more of the site's cool features. I never expected to actually join a game jam, but when I saw the Feminominon game jam, I got a burst of inspiration, and you always gotta follow inspiration when it hits. In case you're unaware, a game jam is kind of like a little scheduled event where anyone who wants to participate can jump in and make a game that follows a specific theme. Usually there's a time limit, a theme, or some other rules and parameters. Some are ranked, and some even have prizes. Think NaNoWriMo, but for video games and tabletop RPGs. The Feminominon Game Jam was casual, unranked, and the theme was simply any feminine tabletop role-playing game, and it was going to last about 3 months. I turned to one of my older ideas for a game that I never thought I'd be able to make. Airship Amour was intended to be a sapphic dating sim that takes place on a steampunk airship. As someone with no experience or interest in coding, and an absolute inability to make any of those code-free programs work, I figured I'd have to shelf the idea for the foreseeable future. But then I thought, why not pivot a little and make the dating sim into a tabletop journaling game? I'll be honest, I didn't really think I could finish a whole game in 3 months. I'm someone who has a lot of stuff to do on the regular and frequently changing schedule. Naturally, that's the reason I can't really commit to regularly posting on YouTube either, unfortunately. And I couldn't really pull this off even if there wasn't a time limit. A sapphic dating sim would be hard enough to make, but as a tabletop game, where do I even start with that? Well, you gotta look at it this way. Imposter syndrome is dumb, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And really, what's the harm? I drop out of the jam last minute and publish nothing as if it never happened. No one will even know. So when I finally sat down to work, I actually ended up doing most of the game in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the game jam. First, I decided on 3 primary stations aboard the airship that I wanted the player to choose from. Each station had 2 love interests for a total of 6 queer women. Since one of my special interests happens to be tarot cards, I decided to make the game a tarot-based system instead of using dice like I normally would. And every time the lover's card was drawn in the game, it would lead to a date with your preferred love interest. I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I really wanted to show off my art skills, but I wasn't really used to drawing people or airships. And for some godforsaken reason, I also wanted to challenge myself by drawing everything using only the colors of the lesbian flag. So that would be a light and dark pink, and a light and dark orange, plus white if I needed. Challenging? Yes. But one of the things I learned during the jam is I'm actually really great at working within interesting parameters, as long as I am inspired. I got right to work designing the characters and the airship using a wide variety of reference pictures, and of course I'm biased, but they turned out amazing. So here's the really crazy part. After about a month into the jam, I'm chillin', kinda bored, scrolling through the list of game jams on Itch, slacking off on the other game, and I see one called the Love Bug Jam. Looks different. The picture's cute, so I checked it out. It's a cozy little bug-themed jam, open for video games and tabletop role-playing games, but I immediately start getting ideas. Damn it. Well, this one was only 2 months long and finished just a couple days after the Feminominon jam on Valentine's Day, and I already have some really cute ideas. Oh, what the heck, let's do it. Worst case scenario, again, I'll just drop out if I can't finish them both. I figured out that when I'm inspired, I'm really good at multitasking. And it's really nice to work on a few projects at once because if you get stuck on or bored with one, you could always work on the other. I'm used to doing that anyways due to ADHD and a dedication to writing down all my ideas, since you never know which ones will take off and become something really cool. For the Love Bug Jam, I decided on a little journaling game called Buggy Juice Bar. Unlike Airship Amour, which I had a rough idea for in advance, Buggy Juice Bar was very much an on-the-spot idea. Although it was inspired by an old computer game I used to play as a little kid called How Many Bugs in a Box. One of the features was a juice bar where a variety of bugs were just sitting at the bar drinking juice, and you could click on different things to see a variety of little animations. Buggy Juice Bar would be a journaling game using dice and a small assortment of skills. Players would choose their favorite bug from the list, choose a die for each skill, then forage for fruits, vegetables, and herbs to squish into juice to serve to thirsty customers who have specific preferences for flavors and health benefits. The scope for Buggy Juice Bar would be a little more mechanic-heavy than Airship Amour, but Airship Amour would have quite a bit more creative writing in the form of tarot card meanings and the outlined dates for the player to journal about. Airship Amour would also have much more detailed artwork compared to Buggy Juice Bar, which I intended to keep pretty simple. However, I did have more graphic design work planned for Buggy Juice Bar in the form of a character sheet and a calendar to fill out during play to track your progress. Although most challenging part for either project was designing the set of tarot cards for Airship Amour for players who didn't already have cards. I decided to go with just the Major Arcana cards, but that's still 22 unique cards to design. And again, I'm biased, but they turned out absolutely beautiful. I do most of my initial idea recording in rulebook manuscripts in Google Drive. Each game gets its own folder for me to organize notes in. It's funny though sometimes how much time you spend planning out a game, feeling like it's taking forever, and how it's not ready for a colorful PDF yet. But even stranger is staring at your word-filled document, trying to figure out what you're missing, what to write, what to come up with next, only to realize you are pretty much done. I was incredibly excited when I got to that point, because designing the page layout is generally my favorite part of the process, next to coming up with the ideas and initial brainstorm. So much so that I usually design the cover page for the game long before they're finished, just so I have something to stare at when I'm looking for inspiration. With a relatively short deadline and a busy schedule, I'm happy to say that scope creep didn't really affect the games too much. From the beginning, I knew what I wanted out of the games, and even though I had ideas for expanding both games, I was able to keep my creativity in check and work with the initial constraints I placed on myself. Even though I started it a month later, I actually finished Buggy Juice Bar first and a few weeks before the Valentine's Day deadline. Unfortunately, the more time went on, the harder it was to work on Airship Amour. I had all the technical mechanics sorted out, but on occasion I really struggled to write the creative part once the initial inspiration and motivation wells run dry. With about a month left, I still had to write up scripted scenarios for each date with each character. I just wanted a page or two to set the scene of a cute romantic date and a few prompts for journaling inspiration based on the specific date. I even had a basic outline for how each date was going to go, so it should have been easy enough. I finished the first date with the ship's cartographer. It was about 2 pages long and took just over an hour to write. But with 6 unique characters and an intended 3 dates each, that's still another 17 of these things to write for a total of 18. I had to make a tough decision about how to move forward. I really needed a break from Airship Amour, obvious by my lack of motivation to finish it entirely. But I didn't want to just drop the game jam and post nothing after I'd worked so hard on what I had finished. So, a compromise. People post unfinished projects to Itchio all the time for beta testing purposes, and when the artwork for their game is pending. Why couldn't I do the same? So I posted both games, one complete, the other near completion. Airship Amour was playable as is, but instead of flipping through a date guidebook for each character upon drawing the lover's card in your tarot deck, the player would get to decide what kind of date they wanted to go on with their desired love interests. I do intend to finish the date guidebooks eventually, as soon as possible, but I have no intention to rest myself or burn out on the project. I got a lot of positive feedback on both games. The other members of the jams really liked both of my games, and I was really happy that my work was well appreciated. Airship Amour was actually even recently reviewed on a podcast called the Character Creation Cast in February as part of their romance RPG series. Overall, the Feminominon Game Jam and the Love Bug Game Jam were great, and I had a wonderful time participating. I'm really glad I joined both game jams, and I'm proud of the games I created. I feel like I really learned a lot from the experience about games, jams, and myself. Even though my creative energy became a little limited and I didn't quite finish everything I wanted to for the jam, I learned that game jams are a great source of inspiration and motivation. Imposter syndrome is stupid, and we all have strengths that we can work with. For example, I'm great with graphic design, so even though I couldn't turn Airship Amour into a video game that I wanted, it is now a damn good journaling game. Working with constraints doesn't have to be a burden either. Having a time limit or a specific theme, or even a limited color scheme to work with can have very interesting outcomes and is surprisingly effective for combating scope creep. On the other hand, working with multiple projects at a time, while not great for time management, is actually pretty beneficial for me at least. That's what kept me from burning out early on in both game jams. But especially when working on multiple projects, organization is key. Up until the point where you spend so much time planning and organizing that you need to move on to actually making the game into a game. And you can always change or add to projects in the future. Just because one game jam ended doesn't mean it's the end for your games. I intend to join many game jams in the future, and there are a lot more games to be created by Sylvie the Dragon Games. If Airship Amour and Buggy Juice Bar sound like your jam, you can check them out on itch.io, as well as my other games that are currently available, Mushroom Realty and Fantasy Prix the Dragon Racing TTRPG, and many more to come in the future. Be sure to like and subscribe for more, follow me on itch.io, and if you like, you can also join my Discord server where nerds like you can talk about my games, your games, anything you want really. Links can be found down below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.